Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 2025 Ops Nest Review. Every year we ask Paul Harvey from M&IT, Adam Parry from Event Industry News and Event Tech Live, and Caroline Clift from Standout to come in and give us a bit of a run through of kind of the highs, the lows, and what's next in 2026. So it's also becoming a little bit of a kind of traditional run into kind of Christmas activity for me now, and one I really enjoy and look forward to. So thank you to the three of you for joining us today. We also have Mike and Victoria from Sorenson, who are going to be helping us on our translation side of things, and a big thank you to Yoonity as well for hosting us on this platform every event session that we do for the wider industry. So a quick introduction from me. I'm Lou Kiwanuka. I'm founder of the Ops Nest. This will be coming into our 6th year now that we've been doing this, and we're a learning community. And the reason we do these sessions 3 times a year is that we started in COVID, dare I say the word, and we have always wanted to ensure that 3 times a year we do a session that's open to everybody, like the good old days when we were all in lockdown. And it's kind of our continued tradition to do that. One of those is all about wrapping up the year and looking at what's next. So we are going to be diving into that now. But before I do that, just want to run through what we thought about 2024. So a quick summary. So Adam talked about the supply chain being under strain, staffing costs and fragmentation. Also talked about the industry needing better collaboration and shared responsibility. And there was also a flag about smaller suppliers potentially getting squeezed out. So Paul brought to the table that we need better data and benchmarking. We need transparency on costs, and also need to focus on kind of continuous learning, improving safety, reliability, and professionalism. And then Caroline, you talked about burnout and pressure in ops still being major issues and in events generally. Training and investment were essential, and that ops works needs more visibility and respect across the industry. And then I came in at the back end, I think, with that we need strong ops with structure, community, and consistent learning. No surprise there, since it's my job to do that. We need a voice, and we need the right tools to work effectively. And I really wanted us to push for recognising ops as a skilled and strategic part of our industry. So that's 2024. So let's kick off now with 2025, and we just want to hear the good bits. Let's start on a high. So Adam, let's come to you first. What do you think the good bits of 2025 have been for us?
I think one of them was recent news of an organisation called Broadwick getting around £20 million in investment, and I think 2025 seemed to me one of those years where everybody was obsessing over, costs, risk, doing more with less, things like that. And I think that, to me, signals that, while that might be absolutely very valid on the whole as the events industry, that it's a positive signal that, at least at investor level, they believe in live events and events as a meaningful business practice and things like that, and something that's going to grow. So I think it hints that the industry's in a good place, at least, and that, for me, when 20 million, although for a venue operator is not a lot of money, I must admit, it's still a good positive signal when we're hearing lots of things like budgets being cut and redistributed and things like that.
Yeah, and there's been loads of movement on the organiser sale kind of market, mergers and acquisitions and all that kind of side of things as well. It seems like every month there's a new, big bit of news coming out, and definitely loads of investment on that side. Paul, are you seeing that in what you're...
No, absolutely. No, in terms of investment, obviously, like M&IT, we write about the agency and kind of corporate side of things, and in the agency world, there's a load of private equity investment. I mean, that's rising at the moment, and that's mainly like experiential events are kind of seen as one of the fastest growing segments of the wider marketing mix at the moment. So that's really positive to see, and they're kind of investing in agencies, like I say. I mean that, but I mean with that, I mean it's meant to be the good bit, but with private equity investment, they want to see fast results and rapid scaling. So obviously, kind of like, that does come with a price. In terms of there's other things as well. So like MIT is meetings and incentive travel, and the incentive travel side of things is going great guns at the moment. I mean, it's growing strongly again, and because global brands, once again, they're turning to incentives and incentive programs as a way to reinforce their networks and drive sales. And it's kind of sector specific in a way. There's certain sectors like automotive, for example, they're going for long haul. That's back on the agenda as a way of reconnecting the dealer networks. But generally, kind of shorter, more intensive programs are gaining traction. But incentives are growing. That's what everyone's telling me.
Well, I suppose in regards to that, and we'll be talking about this a little more with some of with every positive there's negative, isn't there? But Caroline, you were talking about that kind of the rise in that experiential side of things, about what that's bringing to kind of festivals and music events and things, and the way different types of tickets that are being sold. So can you talk to us a little bit about the kind of movement this year on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a funny old world in like the outdoor events industry at the minute. I mean, we've only got a look at this week, and we've had an acquisition where 19 groups bought Planworks. We've had Lambeth Council cancel the country show, but then there's been 2 launches. So MK Dons have decided to launch a festival, Hampshire Air Festival, that's something new for next year. So yes, there is a little bit of some stuff's cancelling, or but then we've equally got the positive stuff, which are the launches. Going back over, if you look back over 25, and it's been a long old year, the good news is that I don't think we've had as many festival cancellations as we had in 2024. I mean, by no means is that saying that it's an easier market. It's not. But then you've got to look at things like mass participation and sporting events market. That's really strong. But no matter which area of outdoor events you're in, so whether you're saying you're doing a festival, or whether it's a family-friendly festival, or whether it's music, or whether it's sport, every single one of them organisers is talking about the importance of enhancing that fan experience, and that is huge. It's almost like the buzzword for the last year of enhancing that fan experience, and that you are starting to see in the type of tickets that are being offered. So you had Labyrinth on the Thames do it, Love to Be, albeit it's a small festival in Harrogate, but those organisers are offering side of stage tickets or backstage tickets and as VIP options, and they are absolutely flying. So as much as people say there's cost of living crisis, people are willing to stick their hand in the pocket and pay an extra few £100 for that exclusive tickets. So at Labyrinth on the Events, they had table service with waitresses where you were sat and could drink cocktails under the DJ booth. That stuff, I can't see that waning. I think there'll be more and more organisers who look to do that kind of thing because people are prepared to stick their hands in the pockets. So so that's a positive. Coming off a bit of a negative, you had like this year in the press, and it happened quite a bit in the summer. It all kicked off at Brockwell Park and Brockwell Live, and Lambeth Council got it in the net from Protect Brockwell Park. So the residents group did not want live events and festivals on their public parkway. It started to happen in Cardiff later on in the summer at Blackweir Fields. But because you have those residents groups opposing the use of public spaces for outdoor events, it's meant organisers have stepped things up a gear in terms of community engagement. And I don't think that's going to disappear. So yes, organisers are getting a bit of pressure. But off the back of that, they are going, okay, we need to engage with our community a bit more, and hopefully we'll see some more successes come out of that.
Well, so talking just quickly more back to that kind of in that unique experience side of things, which links really heavily into incentives. You know, people are wanting things that are unique, different for them, that they feel, you know, privileged to be part of, exceptional, all that kind of side of things. That really rings true in a few conversations we've had in the Ops Nest, most recently with Aaron from Specialized Security, about the kind of rise in people like clambering up rigging to kind of get the best photo, and kind of that real Instagram, TikTok-y kind of viewpoint that kind of reaches out into the wider world. So that definitely rings true, I think. And will continue to ring through for the foreseeable. I don't see that stopping. And it's making us get more creative, which I think is no bad thing at all. And then kind of more touching on the kind of community side, that's really heartwarming, I think. That's a really positive thing, that we're starting to look at events as mechanisms and vehicles for broader community engagement and you know, investment in the community around us, which is something I feel like during COVID we didn't necessarily have the general public on our side. So any of those things I think are a good thing. Any more good points from anyone before we delve into the dark side? No,
not from me.
Sorry.
Okay, I'm going to add one into the mix. As I was thinking, I can't not say that technologies, and it's been brilliant, I think, this year for me, like, and the work that we started doing in the Ops Nest and stuff. I was just thinking back to what we did this time last year, and it was a real moment of like, I just took the YouTube link from this session a year ago, popped it into something, asked it for a summary, spat it right out, and it just really clocked in my head that the speed at which we can get to nuggets of information now has got to be, I know there's lots of negatives as well, but that's got to be a positive from this last year in our industry. This kind of, our eyes are starting to open as to the possibilities that are on our doorstep.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd definitely agree with that. Like, I mean, obviously we're talking about AI, and like the speed at which you can do things with AI, and the kind of time saving involved in that is absolutely, the potentials. I think we're only beginning to see the potential. But yeah, no, I've saved so much time this year, so that has been a massive positive.
If I was to add in as well, we've just come off the back of Event Tech Live last month, which means we've essentially, through registration data, got, you know, a brand new fresh of survey data because of the way that we ask questions. AI for us, the difference between 2024 and 2025 was 144% growth interest in AI from our audience. So that's jumped to kind of like third place in rankings of technology interest, but also budget allocation and investment going into 2020, 2026. So I think everybody is already realizing some of that early value in terms of time saving processes, insight, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'd agree with that.
Right. Caroline, I felt an intake of breath.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, I use it helps massively with like transcription when you're doing interviews. It has saved a hell of a lot of time. My concern is where people are using it and not triple checking what it throws back out at you, and using it to write official documentation like health and safety documents, like event management plans, and they're not being digested properly or studied thoroughly. And I fear that we may have, and I'm by no means saying everyone is like this, that we might make people lazy. That's my fear with it, in terms of, you need to know the inside and out of a duck's arse, as my grandma would have said. When it comes to your event management plans, you need to know them inside out. And putting some really sensitive information into AI, ChatGPT, whatever, that is where my alarm bells ring. But don't get me wrong, I appreciate it. It does, on certain processes, it does save a lot of time, which means you can spend that time you save doing other bits and bobs. But yeah, I do wonder. It depends who's using it.
Yes, I agree.
Well,
that leads us nicely on to the downsides, maybe. So, Caroline, while we're with you, let's look at 2025. What's going in the bin from 2025? What did we not like?
Do you know what? It was a bit, for want of a better word, considering I use words on a daily basis, a bit meh. Post-COVID, huge shake-up of the industry. At the time, I think we said it would take till 2024 for things to settle down, and I do think it did settle down last year. This year, it's just been a case of plodding. It really has. So there's nothing. Like I said, there's not so many. Yes, there are event cancellations. There's not as many as there were last year, but yeah, people are plodding through stuff. My concern, and this, I do feel sorry for the supply market. Ridiculously late lead times are creeping back in, and that just completely takes the mickey, and it makes life difficult for everybody working. And in terms of like costs and things, like we were seeing those massive leaps of like 20%. I think costs for infrastructure and kit have certainly settled down in line, a bit more in line with inflation. Labour costs, security, stewarding, they're rocketing, and obviously with the minimum wage increase, they're going to go up again. So yeah, that's just it. If we can get rid of stupid lead times. I mean, I know there was one supplier who was badgering the agency 2 days before guests were due to arrive on site, and they still hadn't signed the purchase order. And then like I think it was like 12 hours later, the agency said, "Oh yeah, we're definitely going to go ahead," even though they had guests arriving in 48 hours. And the agency was working with a big brand, and he said, "Well, I can't do it because I don't now have time to physically put up the kit and test it to make sure it's safe for all your guests to come in." And they were annoyed, and it was just like, you can't leave things. But the more we accept that, it's only going to continue.
Yeah, you're right. There's a disconnect there, isn't there? In that I see, there's a real challenge, obviously, on cost increases, and yet the thing that would help suppliers reduce those cost increases is time. You know, we kind of, as part of our Ops Foundation course, we do a session on you can only pick 2 out of 3. It's either good, cheap, fast. You can pick 2 of them, but you can't have all 3. It's actually it's impossible. You've got to give way on quality, you've got to give way on price, or you've got to give away on time. And yet time is the one thing that we've got more control over by giving better lead times. And yet it's the one thing that operationally we don't really see as a tool in our toolbox.
We've gone backwards on that one.
It's so important. Hard agree on that. Paul, let's come to you.
I think that the bad things, I'd say 2025, I think we had a bit of a kind of like expectation management issue with 2025, because like certainly like in like corporate world, like coming out of COVID, there were 2 like boom years, 22, 23, they were huge. And then 24, everyone was like, well, you know, there's 2 big elections. Everyone was expecting it to kind of like be a bit of a like lesser year, and it was a bit quieter. And then, but everyone was like, oh, 25, got those elections out of the way, bit of stability, it'll take off again. We'll have a big year again. And that just didn't happen. For a few reasons. I mean, obviously there was the Trump tariffs didn't help at all. That created a whole load of uncertainty and stuff. And here in the UK, we had the budget in 2024 with the national insurance for employers, which was just absolutely huge for like the agency world. Like I spoke to agency owners, and they're like, "Oh yeah, no, that added 400 grand onto our kind of wage bill." And you know, that just really slowed things down. People cut hire, massive costs. But so I think it kind of I mean, it comes down to the same thing, costs, you know.
Yeah. And I think you're right. The uncertainty that's in the world generally, politically, at the moment, does make it hard to really have a cracking year, doesn't it? Like, just the rock beds of in kind of the world order that we've been sitting on for so long is suddenly feeling a bit sandy. So in terms of big stuff, there's a bit of a limiter in there. Adam, what about you?
I mean, it's difficult to follow what Caroline and Paul have already said on that, because it's exactly the same kind of conversations and the same thoughts and feelings I have. Very late deadlines, budget constraints, all that kind of stuff. But I think what's not so visible, and maybe it's slightly more visible to me because I've made a change this year myself, but what underlies all of that is talent evaporation as well. Because when people can't be sure that as a freelancer, as a highly skilled freelancer, or as a freelance ops manager or whatever, that they're not going to have work in the diary, in the book. You know, I spoke to some people at the beginning of last year and their diaries looked empty for like the first quarter of the year. That's not sustainable. So those people look to go into either other industries or other professions with transferable skill sets, or even relocate to other locations in the world that have got maybe a more buoyant or healthy or stable event economy, shall I say. And then I think layered on top of that is those that organise those events as well, right? Okay, trade show organisers are always going to go where the vast majority of their audiences are, but they will shift those events if those audiences are willing to be in other locations and other cities and other countries and stuff like that. But on top of that, we've got to remember about the mid-market. It's not all events aren't organised by what I would class as a professional, a trade show organizer, a festival organizer, a conference producer, and stuff like that. There's so much of our events industry that is underpinned by businesses themselves organising internal and external events and things like that. And when those teams start to relocate and position themselves in other countries, they no longer organise events in the UK. They're going to organise events where they are. So that I don't actually think we'll see the impact of some of that for a number of years, but it'll be like, oh yeah, we can trace this back to all of these people relocating themselves outside of the UK because of economic pressures. And that's where they've gone.
Well, there's a couple of things on that one. I would say, I was going to come into talk about this one more towards the end, but I think you're right. There's kind of a bit of a kind of move towards a different way of living. You know, digital nomads, like the working remotely hybrid thing hasn't gone away. I know a lot of people back in the office, but there's also a kind of more kind of global workforce. A friend of mine's company, they've got, you know, people that work all over the world. Quite a small business, but you know, kind of having that kind of outlook does change things. And I think we are starting to see some of the big shifts from COVID, that like the changes in behavior that are starting to come out into the business world, both in terms of how people want to work, people going to university or not going to university, how they enter the job market, what jobs are still available to them, because AI is like taking that junior level out so much. There's some big shifts that I think are about to kind of come in. I'm going to add in two downsides for 2025. One, I think it's just summed up in one thing that happened, which was the Madrid power outage. I think when power went off to a whole city and every event inside that city for a number of days, I think that to me was a kind of bellwether moment of, do you know what, the things that we have relied on and just expected to be like a no-brainer, we have to start planning for some like big climate-based kind of challenges that will will affect events, maybe not regularly, but that was a big one. And the other one that I'm going to put as a negative was we did every year now we do research in the Ops Nest, and post 2023 on the chart we had sustainability had little chart marker on there, and in 2024 that was a lot better. It went up and in a really good positive direction. 2025 it's right down below where it was in 2023 as something that's front and center of ops people's minds in terms of challenges, and that to me was a real negative, well obviously, but I was really sad that movement had gone in the wrong direction. So I'm sticking that on my not so good for 2025, should do better. Right, let's go with what's ahead. So looking at going back on our little positive, negative, back into the positive, or maybe not. What's ahead for 2026? If we were going to get our crystal balls out, what would we be saying? Caroline, let's come to you first.
So in the outdoor world, there's a lot of guidance coming. So you have got a real mix of stuff. Unless you've been hiding under a rock, we've got Martin's Law. I know when the guidance is coming out, but I'm not allowed to say. I do know it's going to be split into two sections though. So there is one section will be from the Home Office, one section will be from the Security Industry Authority. So we've got that, and because of that, there is going to be a bigger focus on Zone X. So expect everybody to be looking at that. What I would say is most security people I talk to are saying don't be scared of what is coming. Don't be paying thousands of pounds to some Martin's Law consultant, because there's a lot you will be able to do yourself. So that's one big bit of legislation that's coming. So that's that. There's also updates. There's going to be new guidance for safety advisory groups, which will affect how you do your event management planning and briefings and your security planning. So expect that. The police are looking to make more money. So there is new guidance coming out on special policing services. So if you organise a public event and you need the police to get involved, expect to be needing a slightly larger purse. So that's coming. And then we've got an international version of the Purple Guide. So, and I think that's going to be out early next year. So there's a lot of guidance, but for me, that's all pointing towards a safer industry, which is, but yeah, that's kind of the big things to look out for.
Yeah, there's some stuff coming out on medical as well, and I know the HSE are focusing on dust quite a lot, which affects indoor quite heavily, and also kind of this burnout kind of. Kind of your actual mental health within the workplace too. So I think you're right. There's going to be a lot of going back through what you already do and seeing what you need to adjust. And I suppose we're coming onto that security point. Not only is that more money kind of being spent if you need police in the situation, but also combined with the kind of minimum wage increases and things like that for security, that your security bills are going to be significantly impacted, aren't they?
Yeah, completely.
Ouch. Okay. On top of what was already a significant increase before. Okay, Paul, let's come to you. What's ahead for 2026?
I just wanted to come back to what you were saying about sustainability, because I think you're absolutely, and this is what's coming ahead for 2026. But in terms of sustainability, you're absolutely right. It had kind of dropped off the radar. Well, not off the radar, but kind of like it's fallen in importance over the last year. But I genuinely think that, sustainability is clearly not going away, because I think it just kind of you can track it in terms of economic and kind of like confidence and things like that. And basically, although green ambition has been temporarily deprioritized, I think it's going to go back up. as the economic recovery stabilizes. So I think kind of like if you what people ought to be doing now is continuing to invest in sustainability, because whether that's accreditations, environmental ratings, or because that'll be really strategically valuable in the future when it does come back, because corporates will return to more stringent expectations as the economic recovery stabilizes. This in terms of other things as well, I think certainly for the corporate side of things, I think we had a lot of DEI conversations, and we haven't mentioned it yet, but like I think the DEI conversation is interesting because I think that is going to kind of like turn into more of an accessibility kind of conversation. DEI has been, for one reason or another, it's not everyone's favorite thing at like corporate level to talk about, but accessibility, we can talk about that, and talking about making events kind of truly inclusive, whether that's so that every attendee can participate fully, whether it's regardless of physical, sensory, cognitive, neurodiverse needs. So it's about like, flexible agendas, quiet spaces, accessible venue selection. I think that's going to become a bigger kind of part of the conversation this next year, I think. And finally, actually, there's another thing very quickly. The agency world, we're seeing a lot of mergers and acquisitions at the moment. And basically, you see kind of agencies creating kind of like, or clubbing together and making big agencies and kind of like so many different capabilities. Because if you've got a large kind of agency network with like scale and production depth and multi-market presence, that means that you have true international capability, and that's what corporates want, because they want to be able to deliver all over the world. And so it's seeing a lot of that at the moment. I think that will continue. I mean, we've seen a few over the last week, kind of like mergers and acquisitions, and it's just going to carry on because of that scale, that issue. The scale is the issue, and people need to be bigger and global.
So do you think that's going to mean that we end up with smaller startups kind of coming up as well, kind of like in balance with the big stuff? Or is it going to be hard to kind of enter that market with so many big players in there?
It is, yeah. I think it is going to be hard to enter that. It's going to be the mid-sized agencies that are hit hardest, I think.
Right. Okay.
But
sorry, no, go on. So Adam, how about you?
Okay, well, I've got two things I can probably touch upon. One's baked in fact, and the other one might be a little bit more in fiction or fantasy, depending on how you want to view it. But I'll start with that one. I think my experience over 2 decades in the events industry now, which is also scary to say, whenever there is downturn or issues or problems or things like COVID and stuff like that, what we tend to see shortly after is an upturn in event activity. And it's my personal opinion that generally tends to be for a number of different reasons. People want to get back to meeting people face to face, as we've known at the back end of COVID. They want to protect relationships and stop churn. And sometimes they just want to have a good time and distract themselves from it from a little bit kind of thing. So I think while, budgets and things like that, it's not positive for the next kind of couple of years or something like that. I think we will see an increase in brands, corporates, event organizers, companies, etc., wanting to invest in events to get back to face. And I think that'll actually be amplified a lot more even now, with how much kind of AI generated marketing and content and noise there is online. I think people want to get back to seeing the whites of people's eyes to do business, because they'll feel more confident about it and true. So I think we'll see a positive upturn in event business, as long as we can sort these lead times and this talent stuff out and that kind of stuff and bleeding at that end. The other bit, I think what we are finally seeing is some of the promises of efficiency when it comes to technology being affording us as event planners, operations people coming into play. And Lou, we spoke about this earlier in the year at the hackathon, didn't we? That we're maybe finally transitioning into a place where the technology can do the hard work, the workflows, the automations, the processes, the check-in to a degree, and help with some of that day-to-day administrative stuff, and actually allow operations and events teams to be a little bit more agile and focus on the actual meaningful stuff when it comes to the event and how people experience the event, and more time to look at things like accessibility and plan and budget for it properly, and the event design, make it inclusive and welcoming for people of all types and things like that. So I think we're finally getting to that point with stuff. I think we're finally seeing, both from the organizers and from the suppliers as well, we're seeing companies focus on that side of the business, and also organizers budgeting a little bit more in those areas for that as well.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting because as you know, Adam, I've been on a bit of a tech journey, various rabbit holes throughout the year into we're kind of automating, or looking at how we automate a lot of more the administrative parts of the ops nest to do exactly what you say, to give us more time to come up with learning experiences, think about how people absorb information, really kind of become more finely tuned with what our goals are ultimately. But what that's taught me is that we are, as an industry, when I think about how I'm applying that stuff to what I'm doing in the ops nest, and how ops people might apply that into, and organisers more broadly would apply technology into their businesses, I think what it's firstly going to do is really kind of almost like fracture the ways that we already do things. Because if you came down from another planet and looked at what we did and how we did it, you'd think we were mad, bearing in mind like what we do and how we do it. With all the tools that are available to us, if we were to like really look at what the job of operational delivery is, it sometimes doesn't really make sense. Like, on one hand, you can be in charge of the safety of 30,000 people in a space, and like literally your next to-do list can be ordering flowers, and your next to-do list could be cross-checking a floor plan. The cumulative set of tasks that are required in event management kind of are so broad that I think technology will force us to really look at who should do what, and not just how they do it, but what that role actually is. So I'm going to stick on my kind of crystal ball for 2026. This journey that people are going to go on in terms of tech transformation is actually going to make them look at their businesses in a very different light. The roles that are in it, what they do, how they do it, and how they train those people for new entrants to come in and learn their trade when some of this administrative stuff's kind of gone by. Caroline, have you got any thoughts on that?
Well, as in terms of well, I'll tell you what, there's actually a couple of things I wanted to pick up on everybody talking about DEI and accessibility and inclusivity. I don't find the outdoor world that bad at doing it. And I don't know whether that's because they can't rely on having a static, purpose-built venue that they expect to have everything in it, because they stick things up out and they walk into a green field and they've got to make everything's got to come out of nothing. And you see amazing stuff from the teams, whether that's at Truck or Green Man or the guys doing Transmit, DF Concepts. And I've just interviewed Callum, who's the access manager for Edinburgh International Festival, and they did a dementia-friendly concert for the programming and put on an event for people who have dementia and their caregivers and their friends and their family. So in the live event outdoor festival world, I don't I don't see the same things that you see. So maybe there's some learnings that can be taken over into that.
I think the big thing that trade organisers need to clock onto is that humans are expecting more from events whether they go to them in their own free time or if they come to them as part of a business proposition. And if there continues to be a disconnect where consumer events, festivals, etc., are going in one way and trade is kind of going, oh no, we don't need to worry about that because our private investors have stopped asking us about sustainability and DE&I. And they're not focusing on it. I think that disconnect is going to cause another fracture because it just won't be acceptable to people for them to see things happen in their personal lives, but it not to happen in the workplace.
Yeah, I mean, I had a story come through this morning, like DHP Family, who organise festivals in Nottingham. They've just appointed a new director of risk and culture who is purposely there to look at welfare of crew. Right. You've got the guys at Team Love who are working with Bristol City Council, who are putting on a hell of a heap of pressure on their traders to make sure that the concessions, if you go into a festival and want food and drink, they are making it a standard that all food has to be nutritious and sustainable, but also they're on about creating free from food villages, so there's no cross contamination if somebody has a certain food allergy. So yeah, in the outdoor world, I'm seeing a lot of really cool stuff, even down to employers going, I really want those 2 freelancers to work on my event. They're married or in a relationship or they need childcare. Yeah, I haven't got a problem with putting childcare on for them. Or, oh, you're breastfeeding and you're returning to work. No problem. I'll give you a small room with a table so you can pump breast milk, and we'll give you a teeny tiny fridge so you can store breast milk in. And there's a lot of that happening, probably more than you think. And they're very easy solutions that don't cost the earth. And can be done. So yeah, I don't know whether that's the same in trade show world, maybe not, but in festival world, maybe there's some learnings that can be taken from the outdoor world.
We are starting to see some movement there. We're seeing a lot more kind of safe spaces within events, and safeguarding is definitely kind of coming up the ranks in terms of priorities and things. So I think we're starting to get there. I do worry that maybe the reason needs to be more solid. Like that actually the reason for doing that kind of stuff is to make sure people come to events. Right, we're running out of time, so we're going to do a quick what would you like to rub out and draw again. Before we do that, actually, Antonio did put a question in the chat, but I'm hoping we've kind of covered some of that on kind of which is the burnout affecting staff. I don't think we've got enough time to go into the depths of that, but hopefully we'll start to see some improvement in that in the upcoming year. So what would we like to rub out and draw again in 2026? Adam?
No transparency on benefits and salaries for industry jobs.
Cool. I like that. Yeah, what a waste of time going back and forth. It's like a weird dating app situation, isn't it? Like not putting all your cards on the table. Hard agree on that one. Caroline?
For me, short lead times definitely got to go. Fact that everything's a bit but do you know what I would love to say, and it goes back to a little bit about transparency and authenticity and people being genuine. LinkedIn posts written by ChatGPT, or the amount of LinkedIn posts that talk about a real crappy negative that happened on site, and it all has to turn into this amazing positive, and then everybody starts liking it. Can we just accept that sometimes things are just a bit shite when you're on site? Because that is the world that we live in, and there is nothing wrong with something not going quite right, because we know it happens. And I think that authenticity would be lovely.
Yeah, I do like that one. Well done. Paul, what about you?
I was going to say exactly the same thing, like kind of like LinkedIn post written by ChatGPT. Oh my God, just stop doing it. But I think the problem is kind of like maybe LinkedIn itself, like it's essentially just Facebook for millennials who are like working, isn't it, these days? It's like, we just kind of like, it's all about kind of like getting likes and all that business. And it's social media that expecting authenticity on social media is a very difficult thing.
Yeah, I agree. Right, my rub out and draw again. This might not land so well. I'm going to say that ops need to stop absorbing or enabling everyone else's bad practice. So whether that's building stands out of chipboard, out kind of putting up with bad contractor behavior on site and therefore not really enabling the good contractors on site to be brilliant and to get more business, to just to like have a line, put a boundary in and actually kind of drive the industry kind of forward. I think there's too much enabling of like really mediocre or rubbish situations in our industry, I think. Any final thoughts from anyone, or shall we head off and get cracking for Christmas?
I'm good.
Brilliant. Paul, Adam, Caroline, thank you so much. Victoria, Mike, thank you so much for supporting us. And to the guys at Yoonity, really appreciate you providing this platform too. So to everybody out there, thanks for taking the time to listen to us. Sorry I didn't get to your questions properly. And hopefully see you all in the nest sometime in the new year. But in the meantime, have an absolutely cracking period over the Christmas and kind of New Year holidays, and we'll see you again soon.